Welcome back to Tied Down TV, the punk rock opinion show with me, Danny.
And Geoff.
Today we're doing our top 5 vegan hardcore punk bands. So, animal rights and veganism in punk. Geoff, give him a clinic, lad.
So, for me, obviously, the first time I heard about it will be different, but from what I know from history, one of the first bands in punk in general to promote, at the time they would have just said vegetarianism but not eat consuming animal products, would have been Crass. And I think a lot of people took a lot of influence from that. The anarcho scene in general, obviously being anarchists, were mostly, not consuming animal products. The whole thing at Dial House where Crass was growing their own food, etc., etc. Then you got a band like Bad Brains, HR, was quite inspirational in your Ian Mackay going vegetarian at the time. HR said he was inspired by Crass. And then it progressed, it goes right through it, almost from the birth of punk. I think it was almost like an anti-capitalist thing, isn't it?
Well, that's why I was saying, when that was meant to be a joke at the beginning, because the truth is, I don't know where it began.
No.
Because surely, it would, when you think about it, it would start there must have been something from the very beginning, because you would imagine, with the way punk has always been, that there would be a link between animal rights movements and punks.
Absolutely.
From the very beginning.
Well, I could tell you this, I know this for a fact as well. I mean, okay, it wasn't maybe at the very beginning, but obviously one of the very first punk bands, especially in the UK, is The Damned. And Captain Sensible said he got invited to Dial House very late 79, early 80s, early 1980, I think, and he left there an anarchist and a vegetarian, and he said that was the first time he'd kind of been introduced to all these new ideas and thoughts about not eating animals and, living, self-sufficiency, etc., etc. But obviously, especially veganism in hardcore moved into it in the 90s, which it became a whole other thing then, didn't it?
Yeah. Now, before we get into the bands, it's funny because talking about the bands themselves, we've often said that we both came into hardcore through different avenues. You came in through more traditional punk avenue. I came in through a metal side. Definitely reflected in this list today.
Yeah, I'd say so.
100%. Our lists are, apart from one band I've got, are completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah, I agree.
Completely different. And it's kind of funny because some of these bands were the first bands I ever got into.
Okay.
Hardcore-wise.
Well, one of the two, mine is one of them. Definitely one of the first. Yeah. And I think with my picks, obviously, like a couple of mine that I picked, maybe necessarily weren't walking around calling themselves vegans at the time, because at the time period, and I wasn't there, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but vegetarian was the term that was mainly used. But a lot of these people didn't drink milk, didn't eat, consume butter, any animal products, whatever. So maybe not all of mine would be definitively vegan, hardcore, etc., etc. But they're all pro animal rights, and don't eat animal products. So
so just to make it thingy, we have picked bands that certainly have it either in their lyrics or in their artwork that these are vegetarian, vegan bands.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. So I'll kick off with one of the bands, probably one of the earliest ones of my picks. I've gone for Icons of Filth, they formed in 1979, who were a UK anarcho band, and they had, again, like a lot of those bands, but they had songs. Death Is the Only Release, Shows You Care, Success on a Plate, Vivisector, which, vivisection is, animal testing, things like that. And this again is in the late 70s, singing, being against, using animals to test certain products. And I picked them because I think way back we did a UK 82 stroke anarcho punk, and I picked their very first release. These are a band, an anarcho band that I just keep coming back to all the time. I love them, especially the More to Hate releases, especially them, but in general, they're a fucking great band. But I didn't actually pick Crass, even though they are one of my all-time favourite bands, and like I said, one of the progenitors of vegetarianism and veganism in punk. Because I've talked about Crass a lot, so I thought I'd pick another anarcho band. I was close to picking like Subhumans as well, but I couldn't think of enough of their songs maybe that were directly about that. But I do know obviously that Dick is a strong vegan. So yeah, my first pick, like I say, Icons of Filth. If you've not heard them, check them out. They've got a few more songs that I didn't mention as well. Hyper political, and like we said, a lot of those politics obviously overlap. When you're anti-capitalist, it goes against a lot of the the meat industry and the dairy industry especially.
My first pick is one of the first hardcore bands I ever get into. So I often said that like the first hardcore show I ever went to was a Stamping Ground show, and for that reason I've got to say Stamping Ground were one of my first ever loves. Now, the band recommended to me that sounded very similar and probably a huge influence on Stamping Ground, and if you listen to early Stamping Ground, they are very similar to this band, which is, if you haven't figured out, Earth Crisis. So Earth Crisis were the first band that I got into Earth Crisis very, very, very early on. And they were probably the first band that showed me the connection between hardcore and veganism.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was straight edge. I knew all about the straight edge thing, but to a lot of vegan bands, to a lot of straight edge bands, veganism's just an extension of it, I guess.
Yeah.
And Earth Crisis were the first band that I discovered, because I was into this stuff long before I was into like the crust punk stuff, which a lot of that is obviously vegan orientated,
of course.
And I was quite into this like metallic 90s stuff, and I picked up the All Out War CD from Virgin when it was in Liverpool many years ago. And
Virgin many years ago.
And I brought it along just because, like I said, they were the first band that really showed me that veganism and hardcore there was a scene
connection
there.
Yeah,
and I didn't know, and this is the CD, and that is how I first learned about it, because on the back it says "Go Vegan" in quite big white writing, and I love Earth Crisis. Like, Carl Wakener, I guess, was the guy who's, in those early years of when I first got into it, was like the face I associated with veganism and punk music for a while, because
the bandana,
it was that, the bandana and all that, and I absolutely love Earth Crisis. And those first two releases, All Out War, Firestorm, and then Destroy the Machines, I think I put as one of my favourite straight edge albums on this. Gomorrah's Season Ends, I love that. They lost me around Breed the Killers. I started getting a little bit bored after that, and I was, but up to after Gomorrah's Season Ends, I absolutely love Earth Crisis, one of my favourite all-time bands. And I believe he got into veganism once. I think his sister showed him a magazine of the abattoir and all that, and he was just, from 18 years old, he was from then on, he was volunteering at all animal, places and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And obviously, really important band. Very easy pick for me, Earth Crisis.
They're the first thing, like you said, even for me. I'm not a huge fan or anything, but when you say vegan hardcore, like, that automatically comes into your head.
Yeah, you listen to a song like New Ethic, that's all you need to hear. Read the lyrics on that, you know what I mean? That's you know exactly the page they were on there.
Yeah.
But Earth Crisis is my first pick, and that's probably going to give you a little idea of the alley I'm going down on this particular episode.
Okay. So for my second pick, I'm just going to echo really what you've kind of been saying, but this was the first band that I ever got into where I saw and heard and understood the lyrics that they were singing about veganism and animal rights. So I've gone for Propagandhi, who, if you don't know, from Canada, was formed in 1986 originally, but didn't really kind of get going until the early 90s. One of the early Fat Records bands, but they hated all that scene. They didn't want to be a part of it, changed their sound up. So their second album is this one, Let's Talk More Rock, which I picked in on 90s, I think. But on the cover of this, if you don't know, it says, animal friendly, anti-fascist, gay positive, pro-feminist. And that was the first time, I was only about 15 or something, and I was like, okay, fucking hell, you know what I mean? I hadn't really associated it. And then you listen to the first two tracks on that. First one, apparently I'm a PC fascist because I cared about human and non-human animals, and the second one, nailing Descartes to the wall, liquid meat still murder, which very strongly stuck out because obviously one of the big lines in that song is meat is still murder and dairy is still rape. And that really was like, what the fuck? Like, you just didn't kind of think, obviously as a young man. So like, say that was the first one, and I know a lot of their songs all the way through their career, they've covered animal rights topics. His most recent album with song Lower Order on it, where he got tuck hunting when he was a very young man, Chris Hanna, the front man. And I think he said he stopped eating animal meat first when he was young. He stumbled on a chicken farm, and he said he saw the condition the chickens were actually in, not the happy chicken on the carton of eggs that you buy in the shop. And from there he kind of spurred on. And all the members are vegans, always have been. A lot of the lyrics, every album, they've got lyrics about it. And it's still one of my favourite bands. Obviously, they're a hyper-political band, very anarchist in their lyrics as well, anti-capitalist. But not much more to say. I've seen them live they obviously introduced a lot of those songs, saying, you know, and they wore, like, I think the drummer had a t-shirt on, it was like a vegan t-shirt and that, so yeah, I say had to pick them because they were the first band that drew me into, you know, understanding the link between punk and animal rights.
My next pick, I've gone for also a band from Canada. I've gone for the band Chokehold. Specifically for their 1993 album, Prison of Hope. Now, the reason I love these so much is people who followed this channel might know I've got a great love for the band from Detroit, Earth Mover. I just they're one of my favorite bands ever. I just absolutely love them. Probably that album, Prison of Hope, is the closest thing to Earth Mover I've heard that isn't Earth Mover. Got a very similar sound to Earth Mover. They had a few releases before that, a few 7-inches, and they've done things after that, but I think everything just came together perfectly for them sound-wise on that first album, Prison of Hope. And I tell you now, if you want to get into some like metallic, vegan, straight edge hardcore from the 90s, you could certainly do worse than Chokehold.
Nice pick. So, third pick for me, I've gone for Electro Hippies. So, as we've talked about them a few times, and we both love the band. Great, and again...
And we've had a member appear on the show as well.
Don Murphy on our Jail Cell Recipes episode. They're just a fucking amazing band from Wigan, St Helens area, around just outside of Liverpool. And obviously quite heavy on the animal rights, big songs like Sheep, fucking amazing. And one of our regular watchers, Tom O'Brien, I know he loves that song as well. Song called Run Ronald, which is obviously, you know what that's about, Scum. Song called Turkeys, etc, etc. And a big thing with a lot of sort of left vegan, vegetarian bands is this like attack on McDonald's, especially in the 80s and in hardcore. And Electro Hippies on the Play Fast or Die, as you can see, a lot of different images of Ronald McDonald. But they're just a fucking awesome band, very influential on grind, which I didn't say at the beginning really, but grindcore's massive. Lot of obviously vegan bands, and you know Jeff Walker, who was in Electro Hippies and Carcass as well, Napalm Death, they're all vegan, but all influenced by this stuff. This was like, you know, crust punk, grindcore. It's just fast core. It used to be called a thrashcore, didn't it? Yeah. And it's a fucking class band. Like saying again, they've got more songs that I haven't listed. They lean quite heavily on the animal rights side on a lot of their lyrics. And if you've not heard them by now, go and fucking check them out because they're amazing.
My next band is a band from Tennessee that I don't hear too many people talk about in the hardcore scene. Maybe, I mean, I've got a few vegan friends, but you know, I've never been right in with like the vegan thing. But a band that I think these probably deserve to be spoken about a bit more, and it's the band Raid. They released this album in 1994 called Above the Law, right there, and this was released on the Hardline label. More about that shortly. It was re-released on Victory Records here, and they changed the title to Hands Off the Animals, which is obviously a bit more of a straightforward message. And this has got a really tough sound to it, you know. It's really metallic, really hard sounding. It's kind of strange actually. About halfway through, it keeps to the sound of like metallic hardcore, but about halfway through, the singer's vocals changes quite drastically, and he sounds more like Lou from Sick of It All, I think. Okay. About halfway through, but yeah, really good band from Tennessee. Part of the hardline movement with Statement and Vegan Reich, but as I said, we'll get on that a bit more later on.
Nice. So pick number 4 for me. Again, this is another big one. I've gone MDC, one of my all-time favourite hardcore bands. Dave Dichter, amazing frontman, great vocalist. Song Corporate Death Burger off the first release. Song Chicken Squawk. You know, if you know the song, you know obviously all the lyrics all the way through it are pretty much him disowning eating meat, chickens, turkeys, hens, all that. And I know he was. What was the other song of theirs that does like? Real Food, Real People, Real Bullets, I think it's called. Also was a big one when I heard that, and I kind of realised. But when looking back and when you watch like interviews with him from when he was younger and on documentaries, I remember seeing, if you've seen the Moby vegan punk rock movie, people are talking about Dave Dichter again being someone who introduced him to the concept. He would go on about the way your jaw moved, where you know, side to side, which is more like a herbivore's jaw than a carnivore's jaw, things like that. In like, you know, 1981 and stuff like that, he was saying this kind of stuff. And again, like I was saying at the beginning, you know, it's hard to pin down the origins, but he was also, I think, quite influential on a lot of people. And other early adopters, you know, John Joseph, Harley Flanagan from Cro-Mags as well, I think they took a lot from Bad Brains and MDC and things like that. But again, just a fucking amazing band, and you know, scattered throughout their songs, as I said, Corporate Death Burger, you know, again, attacking McDonald's and attacking, you know, very pro-animal rights, very left-wing. As you know, if you don't know them by now, MDC, Millions of Dead Cops, you definitely need to go and check them out.
My next pick is the only grind and crust band that made it onto my list, and that is Disrupt from Boston. Absolutely love Disrupt.
Great band.
Obviously, their album from 1992, Unrest, is a standard in that particular. It was between them and Extreme Noise Terror to pick, because I only wanted to pick one of these types of bands on there, because I like so many of them more metallic hardcore stuff from the 90s. I went with Disrupt over Extreme Noise Terror because I've never forgiven Extreme Noise Terror for that gig at the Magnet. So yeah, I've gone Disrupt, and big influence on me, and big influence on my band, who've tried to quite badly rip them off a few times, as I'm sure you know.
I wouldn't say badly.
Well,
don't do yourself short, man. They're fucking great.
But if you listen to that album, they've also got a brilliant collection of it, 7 inches, called The Rest. So you've got Unrest, the album, you've got The Rest. If you get hold of that, it's got everything on they did outside that album back in the day, and it's probably better than the album, actually. That's how good this band was.
Yeah, they're fucking great.
But the thing that really stands out as well, apart from the amazing music, is the interludes in between the songs, where you've got clippings of news reports where they're describing the abattoir and they're describing why you shouldn't. But it's quite disturbing. It's some of it, you know, it really gets the message across.
Yeah.
Brilliant band, Disrupt. Love them. One of my favourites.
Amazing. That's just reminded me as well, when I was talking about Propagandhi, that was one of the ones, they had a song called Purina Hall of Fame, I think it is, and that starts with like sound of a pig getting slaughtered in and out. Fuck it does stick with you, doesn't it? Yeah. So pick number 5 for me, I've gone another obvious one really, but gone Dropdead, because I absolutely adore this band, fucking outstanding, and very heavy on the animal rights. You know, Bob Otis, is it, the singer? Very strongly vocal as well about his you know, his belief in his thingy in animal rights. When we saw him live, did sing, you know, talk a lot in between the songs, didn't he, about things like that. Obviously, they've got a lot of songs, you know, what's it called, Unjustified Murder, At the Cost of an Animal, fucking every release pretty much has got a song on it or two about animal rights at the very least. And just an outstanding band again, very fast hardcore, you know, I don't know, power violence, whatever you want to call it, straight up fast as fuck. But even all some of their artwork, they have that one, was it Think, Question, Evolve, and it's obviously, you know, picture. I think it's a picture of a cow, isn't it? And a lot of their artwork, you know, pictures of animals being slaughtered and things like that in the booklets. But again, just a fucking outstanding band, and one we both talked about a lot. Love
Dropdead.
Love them, amazing, and one of the first I thought of. So that's my last pick.
My last pick is a band from California called Vegan Reich.
Yeah, they had to come.
Because of this record, mainly Hardline. Possibly the record and the band that laid the foundations and made the concept for the hardline movement, along with Raid and Statement. The music on these records, I think, is often seen by a lot of people as being inferior compared to the message that they're trying to put across. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, like that's what a lot of people often say. But I've got all all them records, and I think they're really good. Do you know what I mean? And they really, and this is great. I fucking love this. Do you know what I mean? And it comes with a cool little like slip as well, if I can find it. I was happy to see this was still in there. Actually, look at that. Right, so this is telling us that, you know, it's time to make a stand, both a physical and morally, a physical and moral stand against the people destroying the earth and all that type of stuff. That's fucking really cool. That's in there.
It's amazing.
You know, I think the hardline scene was a very small scene. Do you know what I mean? It was just made up of a small group of bands. I'm sure there's like more modern bands who took that on, you know, as well later on. But it was kind of like,
it was very, very thingy, wasn't it? The hardline, like it was like militantly straight edge, militantly vegan, things like that.
Yeah, but I think some of these bands get, like, for their music, they maybe don't get the respect they deserve. You know, for the music.
Yeah,
and you know what I mean. I think this is a great record. So yeah, vegan Reich.
I mean, it is good, to be fair, but if you're going to call yourselves vegan Reich, you are going to get associated with it, aren't you? Of course. It is great, though, to be fair, but I get...
But what I'm saying is because of the hardline bands, because of the message, you were really, it was almost like, it was such a militant concept of it. Yeah. Sometimes people forget that the music was really good.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, when they're discussed, it is often that was discussed rather than it's a fucking great record, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So I'm going to go for an honourable mention. I'm going to go for a newer band called Ecostrike, who, if you like Strife, listen to Ecostrike, because it sounds like they've just spent their lives listening to Strife.
Nice. Honourable mention. I was going to say You For Today, but I don't know if they count properly. Obviously, the song No More and things like that.
I'd say you'd get away with it.
Well, I'm picking it. Fuck it. Yeah, You For Today. Let's go. So that's the score. That's our top 5. Tell us what you think in the comments and all that. Like, subscribe, ring that bell if you want some notifications. We're on the socials. Jump over, give us a follow and a like and a comment. We'll appreciate it all. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time.